Do you ever struggle with the process behind actually making positive decisions? I think a lot of times we can fall into analysis paralysis where we have a big decision that we have to make and then we overthink it. We think of all the things that could go wrong. We think of all the things that could go right. And then we just get paralyzed and we don't make a decision at all. And let me just say, indecision is actually a decision as well. So today I just want to briefly run you through a SWOT analysis that I often use in order to make the best and most informed decisions. Now, here's the cool thing. With the SWOT analysis, you can use it for any kind of decision. It can be a vocational decision. It can be a financial decision. It can be a personal decision. I've used it myself. I've used it with clients. I've used it with my stepdaughter. It's a great strategy. And when you get into the flow of it, it starts to come naturally. So let's break it down. SWOT stands for strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So basically, you take whatever big decision you have to make and you break it down using that steps to understand if it really is going to be beneficial in the long run. So for example, let's say that you're like, you know what, I really am thinking about shifting my career. I'm going back to school, getting a new degree or a new certificate and shifting my career. So you'd look at that and you see what would be the strengths of you making that shift? What would be the weaknesses or the problems with it? What would be the opportunities that could come from it? And in turn, what could potentially be threatening if you made that decision? Now, here's the cool thing about SWOT. You can use it both ways. So using that same scenario, you could walk through what if you made that decision using strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But you could also use that same scenario and say, what would happen if you decided not to change your career? What would be the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats of this as well? The reason that I love the SWOT analysis is because it forces you to confront what's actually in front of you. Unfortunately, a lot of times we make decisions on a whim, or we make decisions based on emotion, or we make decisions based on other people, what they think or won't think. All of these things consume us in our decisions, and then in turn, we often make decisions that we later come to regret. But when you're able to make more informed decisions, your life starts to reflect more of a designed format and a more intentional, purposeful living format as well. When I do a SWOT analysis with my clients, I actually have them write it out as well because it's another step that forces you to confront it at a different level. It's one thing to list out the weaknesses. It's one thing to list out the threats, but it's a totally different thing if you're looking at it and you see that the strengths and the opportunities are this small, but the weaknesses and the threats are this large, right? It's another thing if you realize that you kind of weigh it, and even though the weaknesses and the threats seem really large, but you recognize that that strength is pulling you so hard. And so even though there's only one of them, it weighs heavier, internally to you overall. So considering this, I want you to think about what big decisions are you coming up on? What big decisions do you need to make? And then if you take it a step further and you start to look at some of the decisions you've made in the past, how do you typically make decisions? Do you make them in a well thought out way, or are you operating from a place of emotion or a place just being hurried paced or anything like that? And how can you shift the way that you have created the pattern around your decision making to make your decisions something that you look forward to make your decisions something that you're proud of, to make your decisions something that are really life-changing, not in a negative or regretful way, but in a more positive and conducive and successful way? Overall, making decisions does not have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be challenging. It doesn't have to be frustrating. You can literally grab your power back and start to make decisions that align with the future that you both deserve and desire.